As the clock struck midnight on Halloween, I found myself alone in my dimly lit apartment, the eerie glow of Jack-o'-lantern lanterns flickering through my window. I'd always loved the thrill that this day brought, but this year felt different. My friends had decided to throw a party, but I opted for a quieter evening, something I would soon regret. With a cup of steaming cider in hand, I settled into my favorite armchair, the shadows dancing around me as the wind howled outside. It wasn't long before I began to hear whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to slither through the cracks of my walls. My heart raced, but I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on my mind. Then a loud thud echoed from the hallway, jolting me upright. Just the old building settling, I muttered, attempting to calm myself. But the thud was followed by a series of rapid footsteps, heavy and deliberate. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end as I crept toward the door, my pulse quickening with each step. Peering through the peephole, I saw nothing but darkness. I could hear my own breath, shallow and frantic. Maybe it's just a prank, I told myself, forcing a laugh as I retreated back to the living room. That's when I noticed the flickering lights. The bulb above me buzzed ominously, and for a moment, everything plunged into darkness. Just as quickly as it went out, the lights returned, but this time, I wasn't alone. Standing in the corner of the room, cloaked in a tattered black robe, was a figure. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its eyes boring into me, cold and judgmental. Panic surged through me. "Who are you?" I choked out, though deep down, I already knew the answer. The figure slowly raised a skeletal hand, pointing directly at me. I stumbled back, crashing into my chair as my heart pounded in my ears. Memories flooded my mind, strange occurrences that had plagued me this past month, the shadows that danced just out of reach, the eerie feeling of being watched. I had brushed these aside, chalking them up to exhaustion or imagination. But now, the truth was undeniable. The whispers grew louder, echoing my own fears. "You shouldn't have stayed behind, you shouldn't have ignored the signs." I was paralyzed, unable to look away from the figure, as it began to glide toward me, moving effortlessly across the floor. "No," I shouted, scrambling for my phone, desperate to call for help, but the screen was dead, the power had gone out completely. In a last-ditch effort, I lunged for the door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it. The figure was now inches away, its presence suffocating. I could feel the chill of the grave in the air, a promise of what awaited me if I didn't escape. As I screamed, the world around me distorted, the walls closed in, the whispers crescendoed, and in that moment, I realized the truth: I was never truly alone. Halloween wasn't just a night of tricks and treats, it was a reminder that some things are best left undisturbed. As the darkness enveloped me and the figure reached for my throat, I understood this was the end of my quiet evening. Just another soul lost to the haunted whispers of Halloween. It was Halloween night. Costumed children filled the streets, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves. I had always loved this night, with its promise of candy and mischief. This year, however, I found myself drawn to an old, abandoned house at the end of our block, a place that had long been the subject of whispered rumors and ghost stories. "Come on, let's go," my friends urged, their faces painted with playful glee. But something about that house called to me, a dark allure that I couldn't resist. I suggested we check it out, and after some hesitation, they agreed. With our bags ready for treats, we ventured closer, the moon casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. As we approached, a chill swept through the air, sending shivers down my spine. The house loomed ahead, its windows dark and hollow like empty eyes watching us. "This place is creepy," Sarah murmured, glancing back toward the safety of the streetlights. But I was determined. I pushed open the creaky gate, and it groaned in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. A musty smell hung heavy, and the floorboards creaked ominously beneath our feet. "Trick or treat," I called out, my voice echoing through the silence. It felt foolish, but a part of me hoped we'd find something, anything to satisfy our curiosity. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned to see a shadow dart across the room. "Did you see that?" I whispered, my heart racing. My friends exchanged nervous glances, but curiosity urged us forward. We explored the dimly lit rooms, each filled with forgotten remnants of the past, faded photographs, broken furniture, and dust-covered toys that seemed to tell stories of their own. In the corner of the living room stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface clouded with grime. As I approached, something caught my reflection, a figure behind me, pale and gaunt. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. "Guys, I think we should leave," I stammered, a sense of dread creeping in. My friends nodded, their bravado waning. Just as we turned to leave, the door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. Panic surged through me. "Let us out," I shouted, pounding on the door. But the only response was a low, sinister chuckle that seemed to resonate from the very walls of the house. In the dim light of our phones, we saw the mirror again, but this time it was different. The reflection wasn't just ours, it showed us the room as it once was, filled with laughter and warmth. But then, the image warped, and we saw the shadows of children, no ghost trapped, their faces twisted in eternal terror. They reached out to us, pleading for help. My heart raced as I realized the truth. We had stumbled into a trap, a place where spirits lingered, forever bound to their last moments of joy turned to horror. "We need to break the mirror," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. With a surge of adrenaline, we grabbed anything we could find, an old chair, a broken vase, and hurled it at the reflective surface. The mirror shattered with a deafening crash, and a howling wind rushed through the room, pulling us towards the fragments glimmering on the floor. In a haze of light and shadow, I felt my friends grasp my arms, and we were thrown back into the cold night air, landing on the lawn outside. Gasping for breath, we scrambled to our feet, glancing back at the house. It stood silent now, as if nothing had happened. We didn't speak as we ran home, the laughter of children echoing in our ears, a haunting reminder of the horrors we had encountered. Halloween would never feel the same again, and as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits were still watching, waiting for another group of trick-or-treaters to fall into their trap. Halloween had always been my favorite holiday, but this year, something felt different. My friends and I, armed with pillowcases for candy and a sense of adventure, set out for a night of trick-or-treating, little knowing what awaited us. The streets were alive with laughter and the gleeful shrieks of children, all dressed in their most creative costumes. I was a ghastly ghost, my white sheet fluttering in the autumn breeze, while my friends sported vampire fangs, witch hats, and monster masks. We roamed from house to house, gathering candy and relishing the thrill of the night. But as we ventured deeper into the neighborhood, the atmosphere shifted. The streetlights flickered ominously, and the laughter faded to an uneasy silence. We found ourselves standing before an old, dilapidated house at the end of a long, winding cul-de-sac. It loomed before us, its windows blackened and its paint peeling, as if it held years of dark secrets. I glanced at my friends, their faces a mix of excitement and fear. "Let's check it out," I suggested, my voice barely above a whisper. With cautious steps, we approached the front door, which creaked open at the slightest push. Inside, the air was thick with dust and an unsettling chill that seemed to wrap around us like a shroud. The dim light from my phone illuminated cobwebs clinging to the corners and scattered debris on the floor. It felt like time had forgotten this place. As we ventured further into the house, we stumbled upon a living room filled with faded photographs, their subjects long gone, but their eyes seemed to follow us. An overwhelming sense of dread hung in the air. Just as we were about to turn back, a distant sound echoed through the halls, a soft, childlike giggle that sent chills racing down my spine. "Did you hear that?" my friend Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. We exchanged nervous glances, but curiosity, mixed with a hint of bravery, urged us forward. We followed the sound down a narrow hallway, the giggles growing louder, more sinister. At the end of the hall stood a door slightly ajar, a flickering light spilling out from the crack. We pushed it open, and what we found left us breathless. A group of children sat in a circle, their faces painted in grotesque smiles, their laughter echoing through the room like a twisted melody. They were dressed in tattered costumes, their eyes hollow and devoid of warmth. Trick or treat, they chimed, but their voices dripped with an eerie undertone that sent a wave of terror crashing over us. I felt frozen in place, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my legs refused to move. Suddenly, one of the children turned and pointed at us, their eyes glinting with a hunger that sent my heart racing. "You shouldn't have come here," they whispered, their tone dark and foreboding. "Now you must play with us. Forever." Before I could comprehend their words, the room began to shift, the walls closing in like a vice. Panic surged through me as I realized we were trapped, the door slamming shut behind us. The giggles turned into maniacal laughter, echoing off the walls as they began to rise, their ghostly forms transforming into something monstrous. I turned to my friends, but they were already being pulled into the shadows, their screams swallowed by the darkness. In a last-ditch effort, I lunged for the door, but it was locked tight, the laughter growing louder and more sinister. As I clutched the handle, I felt icy fingers wrap around my wrist. "Join us," they hissed, their breath cold against my skin. The world around me faded as I fought against the encroaching darkness. The last thing I remember was the sound of laughter and the sense that I had become just another lost soul, forever trapped in the haunted echoes of that forsaken house. Now, every Halloween, I watched the children parade in their costumes, longing for the thrill of trick-or-treating. But deep down, I know the truth lurking in the shadows. Beware where you tread on this haunted night, for some doors should never be opened, and some laughter should never be heard.